what is this? You know what I'm saying? How did you bring this? But I was vibing. My instruments was properly calibrated. I was vibing right, but I allowed myself to stop vibing where I needed to vibe at, and wasn't really seeing it. And that's what I talk about energy, because you can really see it. All you got to do is look around you and see what you've attracted. What type of woman have you attracted around you? What type of people do you got around you? Just look around you and look at the situation. And if you look across, I tell men all the time, if you ever want to see where you at, take a look at your woman. And then if you look at her and you're like, God damn, you know that you messed up. You know what I'm saying? You know you're making some real mistakes. But so
if I asked you to get a piece of paper and something to write with, and to make a numerical list of all the things that you would be willing to die for, how long is your list?
48.
Willing to die for.
48.
Willing to die for. How long is your list?
What is the tribal self? The
48.
tribal self is what goes above the immediate acquaintances of the social.
Willing to die
The
for.
family, the people you know, live next door.
You would be willing to die for.
Tribal self.
48.
I'm talking about those movies, those yet unborn, and those who are the ancestors.
How long is your list?
So the connection with the ancestors is tied into the tribal self.
48.
What does that mean? That means that the tribal self constantly reminds us
Willing to die for.
that we don't have the right
How long is your
to
list?
claim independence.
48.
and today we're going to talk about the science of calibration. And for those who might not know exactly what that word means or where we're going with it, stay tuned and watch the whole video. We're going to build on and break it down. But for right now, I'm going to pass it to Brother Ward, and I'm going to allow Brother Ward to give you a definition and an understanding of some of these terms, the terms that we need from you, Brother Ward, because Brother Ward is our technical guy. So what terms I need from you, Brother Ward, is calibration, and recalibration. And I'm not putting you in a box by calling you the technical guy. Come at it however you see fit. Mike's on you, Brother Ward.
All right, well, let me first start talking about caliber. I'm just going to be real brief with that one. When you talk about caliber, you basically talking about the quality, merit of a character, the word stature, or excellence of something. But the way we want to deal with this in terms of calibration is we want to talk about it from a position of excellence. So the point of calibration is to establish a baseline of measurement to be used for all others to determine their level of precision or goal marker. But no matter who you are, everybody requires recentering from time to time. So when you talk about recentering, now we want to deal with the aspect of recalibration, because from that position, depending on what's going on in your life and how things are rotating around you, everybody needs at some point in time to deal with recalibration. But this also means symmetry as it applies to mental coordination. With social symmetry, we address the weather patterns of our life and do our best to predict our surrounding circumstances, most of which we have no control over. Therefore, depending on the level of interaction we have with the environment, the amount of control that can be administered at any given time with other people, this gives us the chance to experience others in a way to where sometimes we recognize that we're going to be gambling based upon not having the ability to control your environment. But the more we are aware of ourselves and other people's energy patterns, the better we can identify hostile engagement and therefore avoid it or embrace the growth from the lack of judgment and use it as a means of calibration and recentering our path to a more predictable outcome. So therefore centering is also different, per your age, per the environment that you're operating from, per your circumstances in general. So as we move on, I'll break those down as we get into our discussion.
Window, but here's the other thing when I want to go into calibration, because simply means to do again or to bring back. So recalibration is something that has to be done once an instrument or once something has been discovered to be off. So we have to get it back on point. And if you find and from this perspective, I'm talking about a person's life. or whatever path you're taking on your journey. You know, if you are moving toward a certain direction and your measurement instruments, let's say your compass is off, but you don't recognize it's off, and you start going in the wrong direction on your journey, thinking you're going on the right direction. Depending on how long you keep going on the wrong direction, you could find yourself completely off course. And at some point, you have to make a course correction. So you have to recalibrate your instruments, not the things that you're using, but you have to recalibrate your own life. So recalibration in this sense means to measure precisely, first definition. Second, to adjust precisely. Now, here's the definition that we really want to look at. To determine a deviation and make the proper correction. So recalibration deals with determining a deviation that you have deviated, and then having the ability to make the proper correction. What Brother Ward talked about energy a few minutes ago, and he talked about others' energy. But I want to talk about energy from the perspective of what energy you're vibrating on. I'm a true believer that everything in existence is energy in some way, form, or fashion. And energy can neither be created or destroyed. It only changes form. If we look and we find ourselves in situations that we don't like, dealing with women that we don't like and that are not good for us, friends and associates around us that are stabbing us in the back, and there's absolutely no job that we don't like. We look around in our life and we see ourselves in a situation that we don't like, and people around us that mean us no good. It's probably because our energy is attracting that. It's probably because we're vibrating on that level and we're attracting that to ourselves. I truly believe in the law of attraction, and what we're putting out to the universe is never mocked. So what we're putting out is what we're attracting, is what's coming back. Whatever, I think it was Malcolm that says, and he used this term that he talked about. I'm never shocked when chickens come home to roost. You know, I'm never shocked if you put your chickens out to roost. You're not shocked when your chickens come home to roost. Or if you plant a particular seed, being a nature garden type guy. I don't want to call him a prepper, but he being a brother that went back to his origin, to his essence, who likes to grow his own food and garden and things of this nature. I'm sure he is not shocked if he plant tomatoes and then he fertilize those tomatoes and water them and do the things that he's supposed to do. I'm pretty sure he doesn't go out, see tomatoes growing like, oh my God, tomatoes have grown, you know, because he expects to produce tomatoes. So I'm saying all that to say this: if we find ourselves in situations in life that we don't like, it's probably time for a recalibration.
Something else, just going back on that, because remember when I stated the definition in regards to calibration, I started off by saying from a position of excellence, because what we have to understand that not everybody recognize where they really should be in life. And so from that standpoint, when you talk about just recalibration on a general sense, and I haven't put myself at a position to where I am looking at my life in retrospect. In other words, let's just deal with it when I called it centering. When we talk about calibration and we talk about recentering, we also have to throw in self-reflection. So from that standpoint, I won't even know that I need to calibrate, or recalibrate myself, unless I allocate time to self-reflect. And allocating time to self-reflect gives me ability to look back on what I have done and look back on where I am in life and what I'm going through in life, and see that there is some things that need to be adjusted. And so from that standpoint, we have to be able to deal with it through the ability of self-reflection, which is why I said a position of excellence. And then I also refer to calibration as dealing with precision or goal marking. And what I mean by goal marking, when I'm talking about that from position of excellence, I'm basically saying, well, how do you equate where you are in your life as opposed to where someone else is? So just from a general standpoint, we can talk about just basic academics. So for instance, if the average 10-year-old can read and write and understand basic algebra or basic mathematics, and here I am 20 and I don't understand these things, how do I adjust my calibration, or how do I see where I am in terms of where I should be as I deal with energy exchange with other people? So oftentimes when we talk about recentering and we talk about calibration and we talk about recalibrating ourselves, we also have to look at that in terms of the environment we in. We can also see that from the standpoint of one thing that I think a lot of people fail to recognize is, for instance, when you talk about the continent of Africa and you talk about world powers, Africa is rich in resources. Africa is more rich and wealthier in resources than other continents. But Africa is not a superpower. Why is it not a superpower? It's not a superpower because people steal, leech, and destroy and dismantle African-centered thought in Africa in terms of its landmass from that standpoint. But the people of Africa don't see themselves as being colonizers. And so from that standpoint, they don't have the mentality to take from everything else, because what we need is right here in our own reach. But the problem we find with that is when you look at recentering yourself in retrospect in regards to the energies of everyone else that is attempting to dominate you, then you're forced to have to recalibrate yourself to a certain degree of warfare just to be able to maintain your own borders and maintain your own ability to keep yourself in a position of self-determination. So oftentimes when we talk about calibration, and this is what I want, where I may need us to go, when we talk about calibration, we also have to give into account the environment and the energy pattern of other people. Because what we'll find that we may be dominated, taken over, or ran over, or oppressed, because we are not recalibrating ourselves according to the environment and surroundings that we find ourselves in, and the time period that we find ourselves in.
Now, what do you mean by that? You say we might find ourselves oppressed or ran over because we're not recalibrating to the environment or the time frame we find ourselves in.
Okay, to make that real simple, if I wake up and I'm getting shot at, and when I say wake up, I mean just mentally, all of a sudden I find myself in a situation where I'm getting shot at. If I don't recenter myself to the mindset of being on a battlefield and realize that I am under attack, and I don't recenter and recalibrate my thought processing to address those issues, then I'm going to find myself dead.
Yeah.
And so I have to be aware of the energy patterns around me, regardless of my level of operation. Everything that you exchange energy with is also in that spirit, in that cipher. And so from that standpoint, your response has to be conducive of being able to address what you're dealing with according to the location that you're at and where you are and what's happening around you. Although that may not be my ideal scenario, until I'm able to change the landscape or until I'm able to deal with a better environment, I have no choice but to recalibrate myself according to being able to survive and overcome that specific situation I find myself in at this moment in time.
I can talk about calibration on a personal level a couple of times in life where, and I didn't call it that. I didn't call it calibration, but I agree 100% with War when he said that it was necessary to do some introspection. I said that it was necessary to do some introspection and some retrospection, because it's important to not only look back and see what you have done and how you have lived thus far, but it's important to look within and analyze your personal beliefs, your personal principles, and the things that you stand on. When I was on what E likes to call the vacation, when I was dealing with the vacation time, it didn't take me long to just sit back and say, okay, something needs to change. I am not satisfied with where I'm currently at in life. So I need to make some real serious changes, not only in the way that I think and view reality, but in the way that that I respond to the situation that I find myself in. One thing that, and I hate to admit it, but it's the truth, I took a class when I was on vacation. It was called Cognitive Intervention, and it was very helpful and giving me the ability to really look into my own thinking, into my own thought process. The number one thing that they really focused on real tough was paradigm shifts. And they used the book, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People by, what's his name, Stephen Covey. as like kind of like a textbook for dealing with that mental recalibration, for making those necessary changes. Me, the way I broke it down is understanding that your life is a business, and that you are the CEO. The current version of you is the CEO of your business. And anytime that you see that the business is not going where you want it to go, the business is constantly every quarter losing money, you're not bringing in any profit, there's no growth occurring in the business. At some point, the board of directors is going to vote the CEO out. They're going to say, this dude ain't doing a good job. We got to get rid of this guy. And we got to bring somebody else in, somebody with some fresh ideas, somebody that's willing to take the company where it is that we need to go to meet the company's goals. And that's the way I looked at my own life and my own situation. You know, one of the things about me, and we've talked about this a few times, is I believe that what gives me the power to make those personal recalibrations is that I accept responsibility for whatever is going on in my life. Whatever is happening that I am not satisfied with, I say it's my fault. And if I want to see something change, I say it's my responsibility. Y'all know that I just dealt with a betrayal from somebody, a betrayal that not only did the dude strike at my back once, he struck at my back 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And it'll be easy for me to say, man, this dude is just a no good rotten dude that attacked me for no reason. It's easy to say that. But the truth, but I look at it and I say, I did this to myself. Because the fact is, the guy couldn't have done anything that he did without me allowing him to do it. It's kind of like the old movies, they say you got to invite the vampire into your house before it can come in. I had to allow this dude in certain positions in my life in order for him to do the things that he did. And I have enough intelligence and the ability to, me and Brother Rich was talking about this earlier when we were doing a bill for the Rich Intelligent Media channel. We talked about this earlier about once you get in the habit of reading books so much, it's deeper than just reading words on a page. Once you read so much, once you stand up from the desk and go to moving throughout life, you're still reading. You never stop reading. You're just walking through life and you're reading. But it's not just words anymore. You're reading people. You're reading situations. You're reading the environment itself. You're reading the landscape. You're always reading because you take the habits of reading from the desk into the real life. Because when you read, one of the things that I do when I read is when I go past a word I don't know, I look the word up. Y'all probably, okay. I look the word up. I never just allow myself to pass a word up. I see a word I don't know and I look it up. I ascertain the proper definition. Then I read between the lines and try to figure out what the author is really telling me, what the author is trying to explain and trying to express in the way that the words are written. I look at that in the words of people and the facial expressions of people and like I say, in the environment itself. So we stand up from the desk and we take reading with us throughout the rest of life. So there is no way any of these things can happen without you allowing these things to happen. That's why I talk about taking the personal responsibility thing. But by doing that, and there's no doubt, don't get me wrong. Yeah, it's not Eve's fault that some cocksucker jumped out in the middle of the night and busted him upside the head and took his little old $5 out of his pocket. It's not his fault that happened. You know, it's not his fault. But the fact of the matter is, 9 times out of 10, it was probably a slip in Eve's judgment that made him vulnerable to that particular situation. And that's the way I look at this is where I look at these type of things. You know, that's why I look at these type of things. It's like my boy George Jackson said it, and I think it was, I can't remember if it was Solid Brother, Blood in My Eye, but he said it. He said, very few things that happen to us in our life are outside of our control. The rest of it is usually all on us. And I'm a true believer in that idea. And if it ain't, then I'm gonna pretend like it is so that I can maintain power of it, so I can make the change when I feel like it's necessary for it to change.
Yeah, I go. Yo. In the example,
What's up with them scissors?
I got a magic trick I'm gonna do. But in that example that you gave, someone runs up and takes your little $5 from you or whatever. On the surface, as average folk, I guess, we say, yeah, that ain't my fault. But that's to hold on to the concept of fault and blame, which you have to get beyond in order to take accountability to its greatest degree. What I'm saying, my oldest had a car accident. She's working at Lockheed. She pulled out. Some dude jumped in front of her, and she rear-ended him. He jumped out the car. It's your fault, because I jumped out, and blah, blah, blah. Long story short, Rashida and I had a conversation, my oldest daughter, had a conversation, which I was trying to get her to see that if she lets go of fault and lets go of blame and just accepts it for what it is, what happened, and recognize that you played your part, it was still your choices that led her to be in a spot at the same time that this other dude was in a spot and caused the accident. So if someone comes up and I'm coming out the movie theater and they come up with a knife or gun or whatever and take my $5, my part is I chose to go see that movie. I chose to leave the theater at that particular time. I made these choices and decisions, which means from that perspective, the entirety of my life is within my control, even though it's not within my control. So my video tripping again. But that's the thought process when you get to a point of not. Am I still playing?
Yeah, I can hear you.
It froze up on my end.
Yeah. Yeah, you look like a collage, like you did that on purpose. So I just was gonna just play like we did that. Play like that was something we did.
That's a mad skill, like.
Yeah.
No, but this is another degree because y'all keep edging on the borderline of metaphysical shit. You keep messing with my head. I don't appreciate it. But reality of it is, Erakuti talks about justice, and justice is simply the result of your actions. It's not right and wrong.
Yeah.
Not whose fault and whose blame. Those are emotional ways of finding comfort, making ourselves feel better. You know, I want to blame you because it makes me feel better. You know, I've been in relationships where I would tell the woman, look, you can blame me. I don't care. Blame me all day long. Everything was my fault. Now, can we get to fixing the problem? So once we get beyond that emoting of fault and blame and all of that sort of thing, we can get down to the nuts and bolts, the nitty gritty, or whatever you want to call it, of whatever the issue is. And it's only when we get to that, and it's all peace. It's all one step at a time. You do it one day, you grow beyond something, but then 2 weeks later, you have to do it again and recalibrate and adjust and apply those same principles because you're in a more complicated or complex scenario or paradigm, but the same principle applies. So yeah, it's a constant re-upping and reassessment, and that's one of the things that we have to constantly be aware of. Is that when we beat ourselves up and feel bad because such and such happened and da 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 da. And I'm not saying it's wrong or right to feel those things. They exist. They're valid. Feel that shit, set it aside, and get on with the business at hand. And that's one of the issues, especially with women in this society, we have not been able to do.
And you know, it's ironic that you said that because it made me remember something that I went through with a dude. And I guess we could be fair to say that the dude was real broad like, but I'm not gonna say his actual name. We're gonna call him Ben. I used to work with this guy named Ben, and this guy, we was running the machine together. The machine requires 2 people to operate it. The machine is probably about the length of an 18-wheeler truck, and it required 1 person on the back, 1 person on the front. Since I was the lead operator, I had more experience and more knowledge to keep the machine functioning. Anyway, things was happening that was shutting us down. And I was trying to communicate to this guy that I needed him to deal with a certain part of the machine so I can work on the other part to see what the problem was. Anyway, to get to the point, we get into a big argument because he kept You said it's my fault. No, I did not say it's your fault. I'm saying that we need to get the machine back running, and I need your help to do that. But you're trying to act like it's my fault that this is not that. And me and this guy, and I'm like, man, I don't care whose fault it is. I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. It's a machine. Machines are not perfect. They break, they mess up. I'm saying that now what we have to do is find out what's going wrong and fix it to get the machine back up and running. But he couldn't get off the thought process of I was blaming him some way for the machine being messed up. And I said all that because when you're in that mind state, you can't even start working toward a solution. You can't calibrate anything. You can't, you're stuck there in that, like as you just said, emoting. You're stuck there doing that. You can't even think past that. To me, in those type of situations, with a woman, in whatever situation we find ourselves in, whose fault it is irrelevant. What we need to figure out is what the solution is. To me, the solution is more important than the fault. Let's find out what the solution is, and let's identify the problem itself so that we can figure out how we don't have to fall back into that particular hole again and again and again. We don't want to have to keep reinventing the wheel or pulling ourselves out of a mistake that we don't have to find ourselves in. But you just made me think about that guy. I appreciate that, E. I hadn't thought about that cocksucker in like 2 years. I'm very, I'm very thankful of that. But again, another situation from my personal life, and I'm not going to get into full details of it, but, and this wasn't so much of a hard, well, I guess it was, because I always use that Batman, the Dark Knight Rises. I love this scene. Have you seen Dark Knight Rises or War and E?
Yeah, that's a powerful movie, man.
And yeah, it's a powerful movie. They get real philosophical in this movie, but I love when Bane is beating Batman up. You know, Batman, one of my favorite little superheroes growing up, but Bane is beating my dude up. Yeah, I like Batman because he don't have no powers, E. Batman, and his powers is his mind and his training. That's what I like about the guy. But, and he got that cool dark suit. I like that. But Bane is whooping my dude with ease. And he's talking to him while he's whooping him. You know, I guess I also like the scene because where I come from, there was some old school cats that valued being so nice with their hands. They would talk when they whoop you. But anyway, Bane is talking to my dude while he's whooping him. And there's one scene where he say, victory has defeated you. Success has made you weak. Man, I'm like, man, that is a powerful statement. Because sometimes we start having these victories and they make us stop grinding. We don't grind like we did when we was home. How many times have you seen, and I'm gonna use rap, but how many times have you seen some of your best rappers or some of your favorite sports stars or your favorite comedians or whoever, when they first come out and they hungry and they got something to prove, how hard they go. And you know, later on in their career, you like, man, they lost the fight. They don't have it like they used to have it. And that's what Bane was talking about.
Ice Cube. Talking about you, Ice Cube.
When he said victory has defeated you. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like I went through a moment of that where I allowed victory to defeat me, because coming from the vacation, I was at ground zero. And what's the word I want to use? Not there, comparatively, I got on my feet pretty fast. And that made me feel a little bit comfortable, a lot comfortable to the point to where I wasn't as hungry as I was when I first touched ground. When I first touched ground, I was hungry and I had something to prove. And so I didn't want to be seen as that average dude that come from those vacations and didn't do anything with himself. So I was working just like that. I was building just like that. It was instantaneous. It was instantaneous. There was no play. I was right at it. But everything happened so fast that I got comfortable and felt like I no longer had anything to prove. And not only did I get comfortable, but and I always say there's no such thing as stagnation. You're either growing or you're declining. I actually feel like I started declining because I started participating in activities that was not beneficial toward my development. They wasn't beneficial toward my growth. the too much drinking. Even for a minute, to be 100% honest, what's the word? When I came off papers, what is it? Participated in a little herbal remedies. You know what I'm saying? But these things are not for me. These things don't allow me to vibe on my highest level. They don't allow me, as me and brother Rich were talking this morning. Brother Rich say, I like to say, for lack of a better word, that you was under that possession. He said that you was under that possession that many of our ancients were under when they basically delivered scripture. When I was writing Who Was You Lay and on vacation, a lot of brothers, they looked at those things that I was writing as like, man, where did you get this from? What is this? You know what I'm saying? How did you bring this? But I was vibing. My instruments was properly calibrated. I was vibing right. But I allowed myself to stop vibing where I needed to vibe at, and wasn't really seeing it. And that's what I talk about energy, because you can really see it. All you got to do is look around you and see what you've attracted. What type of woman have you attracted around you? What type of people do you got around you? Just look around you and look at the situation. And if you look across, I tell men all the time, if you ever want to see where you at, take a look at your woman. And then if you look at her and you're like, God damn, you know that you messed up. You know what I'm saying? You know you're making some real mistakes. But so so this particular dude was in my life, and he woke me up to something. He did something that forced me to not only, he forced me to determine a deviation and make the proper correction. He forced me to recalibrate. He forced me to stop and say, whoa, wait a minute, let me look at things. And then I recalibrated. And the beauty of that, of doing that, because it's a beautiful thing. As long as you ain't dead, you still got a chance to make all the things correct, and you get a chance to actually grow. You get a chance to actually to move forward. So I applaud this guy. This guy did me a huge favor, just like Bane did to Batman. He broke Batman's back and put him in a hole. You know what I'm saying? But in that hole, Batman found himself. That hunger, that thirst woke back up. And then, he came back, and Bane, toward the end, when Batman was whooping Bane, Bane couldn't believe it. He like, I defeated you. I broke you. He couldn't believe how this dude come back. I broke this dude. And that was his goal. His goal, he's beating him up, talking to him while he whooping him. All of it was to break him. He told him, he said, I will break your spirit, then I will break your body. That's what Bane told Batman. He told him, you will watch your city die, and then you have my permission to die. That's what he told him. But he didn't believe, he didn't understand that this man had enough fire in himself to bring himself back. And that's why I like that movie so much. That's one of my favorites of the trilogy. If you ain't seen it, then you need to go check it out.
About that, though, is what you got to take into account is the source of your inspiration. That's why, let me go back to one of just a short term of the definition I gave earlier, which is social symmetry. Social symmetry, the level of interaction we have with the environment and the amount of control that can be administered at any given time with other people. And recognizing social symmetry gets into the idea of knowing where you draw your source of strength from. Because kind of going back to the example you was talking about with the rap game or the music game in general, that hunger and that fire that you may see off a person's first album is because they are entrenched in whatever it is that makes them that great artist. They're literally a part of everything that makes them great. And what happens is they get a little money in their pocket and they extract themselves from that same environment, which made them be able to operate at that level. And so when they remove themselves from that environment, all of a sudden, now they have to draw a different source of inspiration. And drawing from a different source of inspiration, they're going to get a different output. So that second album sounds nothing like that first album. So they undergone some type of different transformation that they wasn't prepared for, simply because now all of a sudden they're not drawing off of that same source of power. And so when they recalibrate, they recalibrate within a different environment. This environment don't necessarily require the same level of combat that the environment they just came from. So they take for granted that the skills that they had out of that other environment that caused them to be that beast and that power that, you know, that created that attraction that other people like wasn't in this secondary or new environment that they're faced with. So now, versus the type of training that they did in the previous environment, which was literally survival because they had to fight to stay alive. Now all they can do is train under the same, they try their best to train under the same conditions, but they're not in the same environment. So whereas before you would literally be fighting, it kind of goes back to somebody like I would say a Mike Tyson, where you come up fighting hard and then all of a sudden you at that level now to where you the heavyweight champion. So now your sparring partners have to be at that level of drive that got you to where you were. And if they not, then you find yourself being able to get defeated by the next contender, because the level of fire and the level of hunger and the level of survival that you have to go through is not the same. And so therefore your operation is going to be a little different. So when you calibrate yourself or recalibrate yourself to that, you're going to find that it's not quite the same. And so then that's when we talk about going back and dealing with the introspect or self-reflecting and figuring out what is it going to take for me to stay at this level of my game that I was previously within that other environment.
And you know, sometimes what you'll do, and I can speak from experience, is that especially if you're in a particular environment so long, you will forget that why not to the intensity, those same elements that you had to train for to maintain your survival in that harsher environment exist in the new environment. You forget it. Like you'll see dudes that come out of prison and they'll forget that the people in prison who they were so on guard against, they forget that those mentalities came from out here. These people mastered becoming who they are out here. And they got to the height of being that devious out here. And that deviousness is what sent them to the prison. But because in prison, you can't go home like now. I'm at home sitting in my office. I don't have to really deal with people. But those people are out there. And they out there right now. And I'm just not around them. In prison, you can't get away from them. They're there all the time. And so you come out here and you forget it. And you know, you'll think that if you see a situation where people are doing, where you got an 18-year-old doing 30 years aggravated, you got a 19-year-old doing 40 years aggravated, you'll think that these people out here who are living out here, quote unquote, free and have the ability to move around as they see fit would value this. But they don't, because they don't even know what they have because they've never been without it. Only those, Malcolm said in the autobiography from Malcolm X, that the greatest appreciation for freedom comes from those who have been slaves. The greatest appreciation, I'm paraphrasing, come from those who have been in prison. You know, those who haven't been in prison, those who have not had their liberty, their ability to move around at free will, those who have never had that stripping from them do not understand the position that they find themselves in now. They don't get it. So it shocked me when I first got back and people was running around miserable and unhappy. I just didn't understand that. You know, it blew my head back because I just left dudes that was in love with dudes, 19 years old, never had kids, got a 40-year sentence, don't believe he's ever going to see the light of day again, in love with homosexuals, walking around trying to act like they women. And when you see something like that, it's heartbreaking, actually, when you see that. And then you come out here and you got people that the only thing that's keeping you from accomplishing what it is you want to accomplish is you. They're out here miserable, and it doesn't make sense. Why is nobody happy? That's what I was saying at first. Why isn't anybody happy? Nobody's happy, you know. And it's just that they don't understand that it can get a whole lot worse. You know, this is not as bad as it can possibly get. It can get a whole lot worse. And if you really understood how bad it can get, you would value and take full advantage of where you at right now. That's where I think about it.
Let me throw another example up there. for us to ponder on here. A good deal of people are operating similar to the TV series Walking Dead per the stages. You got 2 stages dealt with on that show: the human colonizer and the zombie. The human colonizer is whose position is to take over a landmass and enslave for the sake of maintaining a level of control over the newfound discovery, and also seek expansion because of the fear of being without. And then when you kill one of them, all of a sudden they turn into the zombie, which is a mindless drone that feeds off of the brainwaves and actions of others. They are drawn to the energy of others, not being able to draw on their own existence. All they know is consumption. And when you look at people now, a lot of times through the predator and prey mentality or the victim and the victimizer mentality, what you see is an exact parallel to what goes on that TV show. Because people are either in a position where they want to take, and afraid that if they stop taking, that somebody's going to take from them, or they're in a zombie state to where all they know to do is consume. And I think a lot of times that draws direct to the position of people not recognizing what it means to center themselves around something that has to do with a position of excellence, like I was stating earlier when we first talked. Because when you think about recalibrating yourself, what is it that you recalibrate from? In other words, like when you first attempted to or reached a certain goal or certain height within your life, and then you start feeling like things are not working out for you like they did in the past, you have to take a step back and look at what has changed within my environment. And when I look at what has changed in my environment, is it based upon the fact that I did overcome a certain element, or is it based on the fact that a certain element took over me?
This I used this a lot when I was incarcerated. I don't even have to read it actually because I know what it says, but I'm gonna read it because I used to use this as my affirmation consistently while I was incarcerated. It's 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 27. But this time I'm gonna read verse 26 with it for these particular purposes, because we're talking about calibration. But I always use chapter 9, verse 27. 9 represents born, 2 represents wisdom, and 7 represents God. So in this chapter, I always used to tell brothers that this is how to birth the wisdom of God. This is it. And this, to me, this chapter, this verse is talking about discipline. It's talking about the discipline needed to keep oneself properly calibrated. But this is what it says. It says, and this time I'm starting on 26. I usually start on 27. But it says, Therefore I do not run like a man running aimlessly. I do not fight like a man beating the air. No, I beat my body and make it my slave, so that after I preach to others, I myself would not be disqualified for the prize. I love this verse, and I'm gonna tell y'all why. I'm gonna tell y'all why I love this verse. He say, I do not run like a man running aimlessly. And if you think about that, what's being said here, when let's say you go jogging, you don't really have a destination in mind. You know what I'm saying? You just out jogging. You might not have a destination in mind. But he said, I don't run like a man running aimlessly. I'm not just running in any direction. I have a destination I'm trying to get to. So I'm heading that way. I'm heading toward that direction. Every step I take is toward meeting those goals. He said, I don't fight like a man punching the air, like a man just dry punching. No, I fight like a dude that's fighting for something. You know what I'm saying? And he say, I beat my body daily and I make it my slave. Now listen at the wording here. He talks about his body as if it is something separate from him. He talk about his body the way I talk about my truck, or the way I talk about my wallet here. You know what I'm saying? He talks about his body as if it's just something that he owns and not that it's him necessarily. So if he's talking about it in that way, then he's identifying something else as the true him. And, in this sense, I think it's the mind. I think it's his deeper essence, his deeper inner self that he's identifying as the true him. So he said, I beat my body and I make it my slave. And we've all went through the situations where this thing, our physical body, crave those creature comforts, whether those creature comforts are sex, too much sleep, whatever those creature comforts are. This thing will crave those comforts. And he said, I beat my body daily. And he's not talking about literally taking a whip or nothing and beating his body, but he's talking about putting his body through the discipline. So I beat my body daily and I make it my slave. I make it submit to me. I make it my servant. I make it follow my commands. So that as I preach this to others, if I talk to others, I myself won't be disqualified. They won't be able to look and say, man, this nigga full of shit. You know what I'm saying? He ain't about what he talking about. No, I'm about this. I talk it and I walk it. And that's why I love this scripture so much. That's why I say it's birth the wisdom of God, because the only way to manifest God in character is to get to this level of discipline, is to make this physical body submit to the higher self. You know, and to me, that's the ultimate recalibration.
So yeah, I definitely feel where you're coming from on that. And I think we have to recognize when we talk about our vessel, that's exactly what it is. But that's, again, being able to see and have, like I stated in the beginning too, a baseline of measurement that other people can set a goal marker from. That's what I meant when I said others can set a goal marker from, because for in order to know how far I need to go when I deal with recalibration, I need to have some type of reference point that is greater than where I've been before. So that pushes me to do more and to do better and to climb higher in terms of my willpower, in terms of my understanding of what's going on. And so when we deal with the root definition and talking about calibration, it has to do with the precision of something that others can use as a marker for being able to base what they need to do to get themselves recentered and recalibrated.
Being connected to the more you are connected to the mainstream, the less likely, the less encouraged, the less appropriate it is to recalibrate oneself. Because if you're recalibrating, if you're reassessing, if you're constantly delving into who it is you are in order to better your mind space, you're not going to be somebody that the mass media, the government control mentally. And that's a lot of where that emotion and stepping beyond that emotion. And that's what I'm saying. When people have their clutch the pearls moment and they stay in that moment, then we know that these are not people who are going to be about their own self growth. They're going to be about feeling good. They're going to be about living in the emotion of the moment and reacting to whatever it tells them to react to. People mistaking the finger for the moon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Psych ain't the fucking moon. Psych's just a guy.
Yeah.
I'm just a guy. War's just a guy. And in that sense, rather than looking at it as, oh, this man fell from grace, he ain't what I thought, wah. The flip side of that is, oh shit, Psych's just a man. If he can do it, I can do that shit.
Exactly.
You know, I can give it to somebody else. I can attain that shit that I feel like is just so magnificent and so wonderful. And in my head, that's kind of the difference between a warrior and a scholar warrior. You know, warrior is good at what he does, has the honor and all of these things, but a scholar warrior truly understands what it is his purpose is, what it is he's fighting for, and is continuously attempting to recalibrate or to sharpen his skill set, whether it's the mental or the physical skill set, spiritual skill set, so that this constant state of growth continues and carries on. If we hit a brick wall because somebody that somebody that we can put up on a Messiah, and that's the other side of the Messiah complex. You know, you get a psych can have a Messiah complex and think he's, you know, Jim Jones or Elijah Muhammad or Jesus or whoever, but at the same time, the masses of the people who are looking have that Messiah complex and are mistaking, you know, this example to be the thing that they're supposed to hold up, as opposed to understanding these are examples. This is what an example is for, to build off of, to recalibrate yourself, to reassess oneself. And we get caught in that emotion that the Messiah complex is based on. You know, so yeah, I ain't nobody. You know, I mean, he just a guy. You know, so that's what it is. And anybody who gets caught up in oh, Psych got done dirty. Fuck yeah, Psych got done dirty. Everybody get done dirty. That's not the question. The question is, how do you deal with it? How do you deal with that adversity? How do you grow from it and move on? That phrase that means nothing, and it just bothers me that it doesn't bother me. I pretty much accepted it. The words don't mean shit anymore. But I forgot what I was gonna say.
Was that sticks and stones phrase or what?
I have no idea.
Oh, he over there full of the mushrooms, War.
Nah, he just tried. He ain't ready yet.
No, I talked about it. I ain't tried nothing. But no, if we're getting caught in thinking that somebody is in this position of greatness and all of this, we really need to assess where we stand and what our own issues with our own selves are, you know, as opposed to taking the cheap way out and running with it. You know, it's very, very easy to blame Psych for his shortcomings or whatnot. That's what it was. Words don't mean shit. It's all good. It don't mean anything in a society anymore. But what it should mean is the law of Osar. You know, all things come into my world for the promotion of my peace. So whether it's somebody in your family doing you dirty, or your guy that you put up on a pedestal and he got done wrong and now it's falling off. Okay, that's fine. Whatever happened. What is it you can invest in yourself and flip that and turn that and grow from that, which creates a situation where anything that we perceive as negative coming in our direction, coming in our cipher, or whatever we call into our cipher, we call into our cipher for the purpose of recalibration, of reassessment, of moving ourselves forward. So everything is good because we've decided, again, good and bad are emotional decisions. And for me personally, I leave that to y'all. I leave that to the emotional folks. I don't really deal with good, bad, right, and wrong. That just is what it is, you know. So if we get beyond that, this is a bad thing, this is a good thing, it all becomes good because we're able to now use whatever comes in order for us to build and to grow. It doesn't take anybody down out of status, because the only way anybody who's really deserving of status are those who don't want the status. You know, the only way War is a good chairman is because War hates being a chairman. That's what it is. You know, so we have to take these things, the downfall of somebody or somebody did us dirty, and turn them into moments for us to recalibrate. What can I pull out of this shit? You know, I done got beat out of $5 or $10, like somebody at a standing on the corner, you know, and begging for money and whatnot. They may well go home, they're not jumping the bins and drive to their house at the end of the day, because that's their job, that's what they do. But it serves me, whether I know that or not, if they're doing this or doing that with the money, it's still good for me. It promotes my peace, it promotes my stability and mindset and my recalibration, because it reminds me of my detachment to these physical things. And that's something that is important to me. So anytime that happens, and I don't just go out looking to get, suckered for dollars or whatnot. I'm not doing that. But at the same time, I'm no longer at the point where it phases me like a lot of folks will get phased. The end.
And that's why, and you know, I can't remember who I read it from. I can't remember where I got it. It was years ago, but it's something I said all the time back then, and I still say it now. I'm to say the phrase you don't like, E. It's all good. It's either good right now, or it's taking you through what you need to go through in order to learn how to create good for yourself. But at the end of the day, it's still all good. It's good right now. He just found $100,000 in a briefcase, which is probably not going to happen. Or it's taking you through what you need to go through in order to learn how to produce the $100,000 that he would have liked to have found for his own self. So it's taking us through what we need to go through in order to learn. I say it out, and people think I'm arrogant when I say this, and I'm not arrogant. It's not based off arrogance. It's based off an understanding of the universal laws of nature. I do not lose, period. I never lose. I never lose. I never fail. It never happens. Everything always lines up in accord with what I need, regardless if I know I need it or not. You know, when I was on vacation, I hated every moment of it, but it served me well. And I can see how it served me well. So everything the universe conspires to give me exactly what it is that I want. All you have to do is be willing to show the universe how bad you want it. And you know, that's one of my personal beliefs that I refuse to get off of. I refuse to not stand on that foundation. To me, that's what the religious people are trying to say when they talk about faith. But I don't think they understand the science of faith.